tell us a bit more about how you then filter the information down to your BIM leads.
Yeah, so as, I haven't really mentioned that yet, but yeah, so the way that we've structured our organization is that I have Dustin, who's the assistant BIM manager. He reports directly to me, and then below us, at least in the chart, we have BIM leads, which are we have one or two for each discipline and group. We have multiple groups in certain disciplines because, like structural, for instance, we have I think 4 or 5 different structural groups for different sectors. So each of them have a BIM lead, and these BIM leads, they don't report directly to us, but we oversee them on the BIM side. And the way that it works is the people that would report to them for support, we ask them to try and utilize your BIM lead, give them the chance to answer your question. If they can't, then it filters up to us. Some people just come straight to me. It happens, and that's okay. Like I said, I enjoy helping people, so it's not a big deal. But that's kind of the idea behind the BIM lead. It's a little bit more responsibility, but it also allows them to kind of bond with their team better and learn some of the skills of support. It pushes them into new areas that maybe they weren't as comfortable with, and generally gets them more involved. You know, that it's nice to have a group of 15 people to make decisions and get different opinions from different points of view and experiences that I can't have, especially now that I'm full-time BIM management. I'm not in the projects hardly at all. So it's really hard for me to make decisions on a project when I'm like, now I'm the teacher. I'm no longer the person doing the work. I can't always know what's best.
Going into that question, having worked as a BIM manager or, currently working as one as well, you're kind of detached from the projects, like you said, right? So how do you get feedback from the BIM leads, or, do you have like a quarterly meeting, and how does that all revolve? Again, hoping that aspiring BIM managers can try to understand, there's a lot that goes into the job. And also a lot of people don't understand, which I've noticed, is you might be great at technology, but BIM management also has to do with people skills. You have to be a good people person, right? If someone comes to you for help and they're, different personalities, and the way you handle them and make sure that you're satisfied their hunger for the question, or you've given them the right solution. So, how do you go about doing all of that?
I'm going to try to remember everything you just asked. We always go out and essentially say, hey, to everybody, communication is really important. I often will tell people, just if you find anything annoying that just doesn't seem like this is optimized or working the right way, or you just have a good idea, don't hesitate to bring it up. I mean, it used to be when I was on a project that I'd have all these grand ideas on how to improve the template and how to improve our workflows. My mind's more on the big picture stuff now. So now it's like overall workflow optimization. But when it comes to like, well, it would be nice if we had this hatch pattern, or if our beams would do certain things, it's hard for me to know that. And even Dustin, even though he does a lot of our family development and our template upkeep, he wouldn't know all this stuff because he's not working on projects as much. So we really push people to just communicate, and that no idea is a bad idea is kind of the idea there. So
just to step in there, do you use technology to get that feedback from people, or is this on a personal basis?
Well, for sure, Teams is huge. I mean, we have forms, some automatic forms, and
but is that a barrier?
No, because that's just an option. To me, maybe some people do. I assume that when you have 3 options, one becomes the only option because you forget about the other options, or you realize that, I'm not outgoing. I don't like talking in person. I'd rather just message. And it can be a barrier if if that's who you are. But it also then allows those people who maybe aren't as outgoing to communicate maybe more than they used to. Mm-hmm. So I think the important part is making sure that like I and others on the BIM committee are available as much as we can be, with respect to real life, outside of work time. So I'm trying to.
Isn't it hard though? Isn't it hard to kind of put a line on how much, because you're such a helpful person? Is there a line on, 5 o'clock, go home, that's it? Because you never used to like doing your homework. Or has the tables turned? Do you switch on your mobile? Do you have a look to see if anyone has asked you a question? Because you are so helpful.
It has been a challenge since the pandemic took us to, for a while, fully remote. Now our company's adopted a hybrid system to where like I work Tuesday and Thursday in the office, Monday, Wednesday, Friday I work from home, and it's amazing. The ability or the things that it's allowed me to do in my life. But yes, because working at home, especially when you work at home, you kind of lose that disconnect from work when you leave, because you don't leave anymore. You're always at work at home. At least it feels that way mentally. I do check my phone more than I should. I have set my teams up to not notify me after like 5 o'clock, but it happens. I find myself sometimes looking and then I have to go, but I check because you never know when there is a big emergency. If there's a really big emergency, as long as I'm being respectful of my time and my wife's time, like she's perfectly fine with me stepping into an emergency and fixing it if I need to, as long as I'm not constantly looking at my phone. And I try not to, because I think it's healthy not to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you do go back refreshed if you have had that disconnect. But sometimes I think, that's one issue that I have with living in a world of technology, is that even if you have set it not to kind of disturb you, you still have your data on, you still have your Wi-Fi connected. You will have a peek at your phone and you think, oh no, I should really deal with that. And it'll hang over you all night until you finally dealt with it. So, sometimes getting that disconnect with technology, switching off your Wi-Fi, but then you have the other worry of if someone has an emergency. But we forget that people can direct call, it doesn't have to be just by a message. So there's other ways of getting in contact. But again, you've got different devices set up as well. Your iPad, maybe you get notifications through to your TV, maybe you get, notifications through. And so when you're having your leisure time, you're not really fully disconnected. You're having also your work in the background. That's for me one factor that kind of comes in with technology. But again, if you do what someone told me once, if you really enjoy your work, you never work a day in your life. So if you really enjoy it, then it's fine.
Yeah, and it goes right when you have a global company as well. I think Batu and I have realized that recently. She's in the UK, I'm in the US. With the time difference, it's usually I ping her when it's after hours for her, and I realize, oh no, I pinged her at the wrong time. I apologize for that.
So there's no need for apologies. It's you are working for from your time, and sometimes I would have my work phone with me and I would have a look, and I would just jump on, and other times I would just try to disconnect, because by the time you ping me, it would be, I would have disconnected by that hour. So so sometimes it doesn't come through, or sometimes it does. But again, it's, when you're in a global kind of situation, it makes things a bit more fun, I think. But because you can be a bit more flexible on it as well. So, I think there's some scenarios where we need to be a bit more thoughtful of the other time zones as well. I think we're on 3 different time zones today, right? Are you both?
Yep.
Yeah. 3, see, and we managed to do this podcast. How great is that?
In discussing feedback and kind of improvement across our company, have you guys ever heard of Kaizen before?
The concept of Kaizen, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, I think it was originally developed by a Toyota company. And the idea is that everybody in the company is working towards improving all the processes, and that every single employee has value. And one of the best kind of quotes or examples was that the CEO would often go talk to, people on the assembly line or even janitors, because they know what they're doing more than anybody else. And the improvement to an assembly line is not going to be done by like the top manager, because they don't understand all the little pieces going together.
Intricacies, yes, yeah.
And so when it comes to like the BIM workforce, like, sure, I know a lot. I've been doing this a long time, and my BIM leads know a lot, but they may not know what, for us, when we bring in a new person into BIM, they're called a technician, and they're doing red lines and some of the more basic stuff as they learn and develop as an employee. They're going to understand some of the annoyances of picking up red lines, more than anybody else would. And so we want feedback from them. So that's kind of the idea, and making them feel like their input's valuable is super important there. So I've always been kind of this is from my mom, but essentially a cheerleader. Like I think positive reinforcement's huge. So I reward people for giving feedback. Again, even if it's negative feedback, I just tell me. I'd rather know that we're doing something wrong and be able to fix it. Yeah.
You wouldn't know. It's almost like, being in a group, you wouldn't know what the other person is thinking. They have to tell you in order for you to know. I think that's really valuable because you're not having two parallel lines. You're connecting the lines. We're now on the same track. And for any business, for any idea, for any kind of venture, even if it's going out with your friends, say one person would like to go to the cinema, but one person would rather eat, so that's two completely different things. Would rather eat and socialize, or stay in the cinema, be quiet for the next 3 hours. It's a totally different situation. So always that communication, that open dialogue is really important. And the more open dialogue we have within our working environment, the better it is for us to kind of see the vision for moving forward, to see how we can better move forward, or streamline our daily work to focus on what we really need to focus on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I really want to focus again on automation and AI, because every time you turn around, look at the news or read, newspapers, that's the only thing that's being talked about, right? Automation, AI, and how it's helping us or hurting us, right? So we do have a product that we have, Naviate Cloud Manager. What it does, it provides automation, and it helps the BIM manager to do bulk tasks for ACC BIM 360. And I know, Robert, you've been using that for a little bit now. If you could give us some of your, insights and let our audience know, how has that helped you make you a better BIM manager, saved you time, improved your work-life balance, because, with automation and AI, that's what we're trying to do initially, right? We're trying to help people manage things better so that some of the mundane, repetitive tasks are automated and they can focus on higher value tasks, which are like sustainability, focusing on a particular design. So you reduce your carbon emissions and stuff like that. So, I would just pass it on to you.
Yeah. It's become a really model. Cloud Manager is a model employee for us at this point. Because it for the most part does what we ask it to do all the time. And when it doesn't, we have a phenomenal support team, Pratik being one of those people that helps me get my model employee back in line. But as I mentioned earlier, the publishing is fantastic. Just the ability to create a what's called a job in the software, set it to publish, and then rather than having to add every single project, I used a different software. I won't name it right now, but where I had to add every single time a project was created, I have to go manually add each model. And that still was way better than doing it manually through Revit. But now I essentially create a job. I say all projects with such and such in the name. So I give it like 6-digit, project number, and then look for, like, we always put our projects in the VA folder. I don't want to publish our clients' models. So I filter just to VA folders, and I say publish every Revit model in a VA folder through all of our projects. And that's one job that runs at 9:00 every night. And all of the models that we have that have been worked on that day get published. And just to note, the reason we do it at 9 is so that all the models finish processing by the morning. So all of our engineers who don't use Revit but want to go into the viewer online will have it ready to go. And that was the biggest problem, was doing it at 9:00 at night, because we have to do it at 9. I actually like having a life at night. So So it's freed that up. Other things that we do, I mean, we haven't used a lot of the file copy features, but the jobs and members. So that's a really good one. The members section of this. I mean, this is probably the bigger or the biggest time saver for us. As I mentioned earlier, we have a ton of projects and we have a ton of users. So a single project starts, if I were to add every single member from our company to it manually, would take an hour or two per project. On average, I probably fire up 5 to 7 roughly projects per week and have to add all the people. So that's what, say 1.5 hours. We'll say one. Well, let's just be conservative, say 1 hour per project, 7 hours per week that I'm going to throw away just to add, people to projects. So I can use Cloud Manager to just click on the project, check all our people, hit a button, they all get added. The same thing happens when we have a new person starts and I have 500 projects that I add them to. That takes even longer because you have to go to each project on ACC one at a time and add them. Now I can just say, check all projects, click on the person, add all projects, done. So that's amazing. And what's cool about technology is, we've all these things that we have to do, I have to track, make sure I've done them because I get requests when I'm doing other things. I can't just stop. So, I mean, I've created a Microsoft form. If you are working on in a Microsoft Suite application, which most people in this industry are, you'll have access to forms. You can create a form, and then you can use Power Automate, which is another Microsoft service. Whenever somebody fills out the form, they put in a request for like an ACC project. It asks for job number, job name, location, which disciplines are going to be in the project, which version of Revit. They hit a button, it submits to an online form. Power Automate catches it. I have that put into a tasker. So it creates a task for me and with all the steps that I need to follow. Because again, I might get interrupted halfway through the process. So I can check them off as I go. If I get interrupted, I still have this task that I know needs to be finished. So that's how we use technology here. Just as many automatic tools. I mean, how can you put a value on being able to come back to a task and not have to necessarily rev back up into it? You already know where you were. It's easy to come back in. So that's
really great. I mean, that's something I struggle with. If I am, say, for example, doing in the middle of a task, and get a phone call or something, you get distracted. To then go back into that task, you add in another 10 minutes to kind of connect with where you were, and to keep adding those on. But at the same time, to do something so thorough as what you've done, where you can come back straight into a task, people might see that as time wastage because you're kind of writing out every single thing and they think, let me just get into the task, let me just do it. How do you kind of either argue with yourself or with your colleagues or someone else who you're setting up these tasks for, but you think, do I really need to go that detailed? Can I just have an overview? How do you deal?
I would agree with you if somebody was writing out all those tasks for each one. Yeah. For each one that gets created, that would be a waste of time. That's with Power Automate, I know that when somebody requests an ACC project, there's like 4 steps. So that's programmed into Power Automate. So when it creates a task, the task already has the 4 subtasks built into it. So I had to do it once, and maybe I have to modify it when I learn I need to add a task. I just go into Power Automate, plug that in. Next time a new task is created, it comes with 5 subtasks instead of 4. So I would agree with you. I think there's a tough balance when you're dealing with task management and how much of your time can you spend managing those tasks besides just doing them. That's I have to kind
of say to myself, Batul, look, if you're going to write these down, you're clear in your head. You've now got what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and that kind of gives me the sanity of it's okay to do this. It's okay to be organized. But then when you see the beauty of it is when you actually go in and you have those green ticks next to things and you're like, yes, achieved it, I've achieved. You feel there's some kind of psychological thing behind that, I think, where you feel you've really done something now. And you just feel great at the end of the day for achieving it. But the days when you're planning and, the end of the day, you think, I've not really done anything. We're technical people. We really need to, have that green tick, and I've not really done a green tick today, and it's like, how do you get over that?
there's days like that as a BIM manager. I'm assuming any other BIM managers will probably know the feeling of, well, that was a fun day of meetings,
Yeah.
I didn't achieve anything today.
Yeah.
So
coming up next on Optimise Et al.
I did want to continue our conversation about automation, right?
Yep.
We have Dynamo, we have macros, we have plugins, add-ins. I'm just going to keep this open-ended. Have you dabbled in Dynamo, macros, creating your own add-in that you felt that, oh, I'm noticing that there's something that is being done repetitively?
my dislike for repetitive tasks led me quickly into Dynamo. Have not created my own add-in code-wise, but through Dynamo and certain packages like data shapes have essentially done my own add-ins, sort of. We at one point had a template for each discipline. So that was like 4 or 5 different templates. And we were still, we've been growing since I got here. Anytime there's a change to one, you have to change it in all 5. So upkeep time became a big problem, especially when I was getting, 10 requests per week of different changes. You'd hold them all back. You'd end up with 200 requests after a few months. You're like, okay, now I got to go do 200 requests to 5 templates. And that, again, coming back to my brain type was like, oh, nope, I think I'll just keep waiting on that a little bit longer. So I started looking in Dynamo for a solution and was able to build a graph that essentially allows me to have one template.
I think your personalities fit in for this particular role because you're able to communicate and include everyone in what you do and explain it on an easier level. In anything that we do, if it's, say, for example, cooking a recipe, you might just say, oh, you just put in this, the other. And to someone else, that could be really daunting. But if you just kind of simplify and say, oh, you've only got 3 ingredients. Oh, and they instantly perk up. It was like, oh, okay, only 3 ingredients, right? Okay. And I've got them all in my fridge. That's brilliant. I could do this. So it's the way that you take it across. And like you say, just to pique their interest, I think that's incredible in any line of work. And I think it's something we should all kind of work harder to do when we are involving others in the team.